Hey guy, what's up? Welcome to another episode of Digital Art with Jesus Conde. And today we're going to be working on this sculpture. I'm using ZBrush to make this, and the technique is very simple. Actually, it's not that complex. But in this episode, I'm going to just go through over the whole over process of how I did the sculpture, and starting from the very beginning, which is a small sketch. At the beginning, I wanted to do just the head, but then I got inspired and continued. But basically, the idea was to make some kind of an alien creature that was kind of like insect looking or something like that. But yeah, definitely something like alien. And I started with this small sketch of just the head, and as you can see, later I got inspired and did the entire body in the sculpture. But it started with the idea of just making the head of it, and it's really nice to work on 3D for some things. For creatures, I feel like it's more intuitive, not so much for making like architectural stuff. I mean, when I say 3D, I mean like ZBrush. For architectural stuff, I prefer 3ds Max or something more simple to use tool, or that give me, or basically I guess it's just that I know how to use it more than ZBrush. But ZBrush is very intuitive for creatures, or at least the tools that I'm using, which is Dynamesh and a lot of duplicating and mirroring. And once you get to get the, I will say that the most important things will be to learn how to mask things, and yeah, working with a lot of symmetry. that's about it in terms of the tools that I'm using inside of ZBrush. So I tried different heads for this design at the beginning. And then in the sculpture itself, I was like exploring more and more, but having these initial ideas for them. I didn't want to go full insect with it, and at this point I have at another screen I have the sketches up with so I can see them all the time. So I started with a really simple sculpt. That's one of the things that my teacher, when I was studying ZBrush, really put emphasis on, that we should get the volumes really well first, and then you can just do whatever details you want. But if the volume is not something that you like, then the sculpture is basically flawed. Is not gonna work. So at this point, I'm working on the volume. That's why it looks so simple. The mesh, and it's because I just wanna get the volumes right. And obviously, it can get a real tricky to use it on the first time. But as you can see, I just took the head and started sculpting the chest from it. It feels so free when you work with Dynamesh, because it allows you to just create more and more geometry as you are working. So it gets pretty easy if you know what you're doing. Once you know what you're doing, it gets really fast. Not as fast as like a drawing, for example, but that's basically because if you've been drawing all this time, that's what you know what to do, right? Once you get to know the 3D tools better, you will get faster exponentially. So my plan is to start using a lot more 3D, and if you like this kind of stuff, just let me know. I will also continue drawing, of course, because that's the thing that I love the most, and it's very important. You cannot like go to do this ZBrush stuff without having some at least a little bit of knowledge about anatomy, something very basic, because you will still learn anatomy and everything else on ZBrush. because you need to. You're just not going to jump and do amazing sculptures right away. For example, something that I like to do a lot is this. I do these little balls, like spheres, and I know there has to be another way of doing this, but what I usually do is just put the sphere where I need it, and then duplicate it, and then mirror it, and then just merge those two spheres. And if I put on the symmetry, it works perfectly. And then everything else that I need, I can just get them from the eyes. Actually, if I need like a sculpt a leg, for example, this is the process again. I just put the spheres what I needed in terms of like in just get the sphere where you need it in one side, and then just duplicate it, and then mirror it, and then merge those two, and then you can work with the symmetry on. And if I need to do anything else, I just duplicate those eyes and start sculpting from there. You're gonna see that a lot in the later on the video. So you don't have to like create a new sphere all the time and do things like that. You can just reuse some of the geometry that you already have. It's basically one of the advantages, I guess, from working on digital instead of traditional sculpt. Not that they are similar in anything. Just the fact that your sculpting is similar, but everything else is pretty different, I think. For the antennas, I did wanted to go with a cylinder, but now that I see it, I should have made them with just copying the eyes and sculpting, because it's basically the same thing. It's not that complex. So at this point, I started to actually look for some more reference, because I was looking at just my sketches. That's a huge mistake, to just look at the sketches that you have. It was starting to look like a cat instead of an insect. So I went for some reference later, and I get some pretty interesting shapes that needed in there to make it look more like a insect than a cat, because it was starting to look really a lot like a cat, and that's a bad thing when you're trying to make an insect. So yeah, you can see it can get pretty fast quickly when you kind of know what you're doing with all the like the layers and all the shapes. It gets pretty easy actually. And I like this workflow because you can see the whole creature at the same time, and you are testing things around. If you were drawing, you will be like erasing all the time, and you can actually do the same thing, obviously, but this is really fun to do. Like to do it in 3D is really fun, and for me, I believe that's really important, that you have fun doing things. Because once you have fun on the process, it becomes like less of a struggle, less work to do. It's not that difficult to just jump on it and like go, okay, I'm going to do this sculpture. But you need to practice something, and it's gonna be like a hard time to do. Like, oh man, I don't want to do this right now. It feels more like work than something fun to do. I believe there's a problem there. Like you shouldn't feel that hard. I mean, it's hard because this took time to do. This took effort. It's actually very hard to learn at the beginning, but once you once you pass that part, that it feels like a job to do, then everything becomes really easy to continue with. Right here I'm just adding some muscles and things like that, but then it's an insect, so I gotta be careful that it doesn't look too much like fleshy, and it looks a little bit more like hard shell. Right now I'm testing some things with the shape of the head, and I actually wanted to put more like little teeth and things like that, and that's basically it. I just copy the eyes and made these small fangs, and everything from now on is almost everything is just copying the eyes, because it's the most easy geometry that I have available. Just copying the eyes and modify them, and they are in symmetry. They are I can place them whatever I want, and I can start from there and make it be whatever size I want them to be. So it's really useful. Just doing that is really useful. Copying the eyes. Here I look at some reference on Pinterest about insects to sculpt the shape of the legs a bit. So basically that's why it stops for a few seconds, because I'm actually looking at some reference and things like that, and then I come back and just continue with it. Obviously this video is like super speed up, and even then I wanted to be like a really short video, but I couldn't without cutting a lot of things, and I didn't want to have like a really cutted video for you guys. On the next episode, what I plan to do is to make like maybe like a concept of it, and then some kind of screenshots, like if it was in a movie or something, and maybe later we can develop some aspects about the civilization of them or something like that. I don't know. We'll see what can we do with this kind of thing. It can get pretty cool to do all this stuff in 3D. It feels more like you were developing an entire world and not just doing I mean, if you do it with drawings, is the same thing, like you are developing something. But when you're doing it, there's something about the 3D aspect of it. It feels like you were already working on a big project or something like that. It's pretty cool. Anyway, as you can see, I have the body till there, which is I was like, okay, so should I leave this there or should I continue? That, I mean, you can do whatever you want, and you can get pretty complex really easy. The last thing that I really tried to do was to add also another set of arms, but you will see that later. I was like, okay, so this worked, adding this couple of guys here, these fangs. I don't actually know the names of those things. Worked. They look more like it looks more like a insect than anything else, and I really like that. Also putting this small teeth in there, and the reason why it looks so sketchy is because that's the way I want to do it. I don't want to put more detail to this because later I'm gonna paint over. So you don't want to do like a super detailed concept sculpture, because it's not worth it for concept art. It's just too much work for doing it like just doing it like that is not necessary. What you want to do is have something the fastest as possible, so you can go ahead and do the paintings that you want to do. Okay, so now I jumped to the rest of the body, and now what I did was just copying the eyes again and put it like on the arms to do like another set of long shaped fingers like that. And I have to think, what will they do? What will they use as a weapon? What will they use if they were some kind of a tribe or something like that? What will they use as a necklace or something like that? I gotta think all those aspects, because I wanna try to do that later on the next episodes. And in this one, I was actually looking at some anatomy guide that I have here, like a sculpture of a human. And again, I gotta be careful because this is not a human, this is an insect. But it really gives me an idea of how things should be, kind of. So that's really helpful. So just the fact that I took the eyes and convert them to legs is pretty crazy in my opinion. Okay, now for some reason I'm getting this all the time, these red screens, but then everything is fine. Okay, so at some point you need to make a little paint over. I got the sculpt and wanted to paint some ideas on, because I have no idea what to do left with the legs. And it's also like faster just to sketch something up with Photoshop, which is the tool that I know the best, and just to have an idea of what could I do with this pose and with the legs and things like that. And later it gets pretty easy when you take it again and continue with it. Also, the legs should be a little bit more bulkier. They look way too thin. Even that it is a insect and should be thin, is way too thin. So I gotta fix that. And it really working like this way with 3D and everything. It's also pretty cool to see the proportions of your creature all the time. Okay, so this should be bigger. This should be. It feels more like a complete job to work this way. So I'm definitely gonna try to put this on the way I do things on my usual job. Normally it's just making a lot of drawings for sketch, so that's a start. That's a good thing. And then like making some sometimes I do 3D, but it's just when I can find the asset online. Like if you have to design an elephant or something like that, just look it up and find it. But it's not like very creative way of working. It's just to cut time on rendering, because I can just put some lighting and material and I can render the thing and get some lighting reference and perspective and all the stuff really easy because it's on 3D. But then everything else that is related to design, I have to draw it. Okay, so here is when I duplicate. I have to separate the things that are unmasked, and I just copy the arms that way, and it gets pretty easy once you know how to do that kind of thing. And if you're working with Dynamesh again, it's like the most wonderful tool ever. When I saw that on my ZBrush classes like 2 years ago, when I went, was like, I guess this is like the best thing that I learned in here. Not that everything else wasn't that good, but this was like a game changer for me. This made a lot of sense for me in terms of the creative process of it. Like, you don't have to slow down because it's super technical. Working like this with Dynamesh became like the reason why it is like I do want to work with 3D now, because it was like a freeing feeling that you are not like constrained by the technique too much. You still constrained with using 3D, because there's a lot of stuff that you cannot do right away, especially if you're using other tools. Like if you want to use another render to get the lighting and the materials, you have to put it on another software and things like that. It can get pretty long in the process. Once you know how to do that kind of automatic, it gets faster, but it's not fast enough at the beginning to be like super simple to use. It gets really boring at the beginning when you're learning it. Once you have all that knowledge, it's like super easy. It's like, oh, just put this on 3ds Max and render it on Octane and put some lighting on. But you already should have all that knowledge. If you want to learn it from scratch, it can get pretty heavy. Anyway, that thing about working with Dynamesh was the thing that made me really want to work with 3D again for concepts. It's really simple to use, I believe. Anyway, here I'm adding a lot of stuff on the feet and sculpting the legs in a more of a box shape a little. I wanted to make some kind of a thumb part, And here I actually like remembering things. I know there was a way to just work on that thing alone instead of the whole mesh of the creature. So there's a button on the lower right that says solo. That's one of the things that got stuck a lot on me on the time of the classes, and I just rediscovered it because I needed to use it. I was like, oh, I know this is something that I can do to make this easier, and there it was. Everything else that you're seeing right now is just copying things and moving things around. It's not that hard. That's one other of the advantages of working with 3D. The most difficult thing I will say is posing. Posing can get pretty heavy when you don't know how to like mask things and stuff like that. If you know how to mask things up, it gets pretty easy. It just takes time, but you can basically just pose your character whatever the hell that you want at any time. Just knowing how to mask and using the transpose, which is just basically move, scale, and rotate. But the way to learn how to use it is with a lot of practice. Like, you need to really know what you're doing with that tool, or you can really break your model. And you also gotta have everything collapsed. All the mesh gotta be collapsed for the time that you do that. So you have to do it carefully, saving your other version, and then saving like a version that you wanna pose, so you don't lose stuff. At this point, I put a little bit more of detail on the body, just to make things looking a little bit more sharper. But I didn't want to do that too much, just the necessary to define some shapes. That's it. Nothing more than that, because it was starting to take some time to do. Also because it's the first time that I used this again. Since a long time ago, but I didn't want to spend a lot of time working on it, because later what we're going to do is we're gonna take this, we're gonna make a couple of renders and do a concept art, and then we're gonna be doing some screenshots, like movie screenshots or scenes. It's gonna be cool. Anyway, now we get to the posing part. Like, I collapse everything, and once you know how to like mask things up, you can really move stuff. It gets pretty easy to do. It took me a little to remember how to do this kind of thing, but once you kind of know how, it gets pretty easy actually. But what you should do when you're doing this kind of thing, I guess, is to like know exactly what you're going to have as a pose. You need to like maybe make a sketch of the pose that you want, so you kind of have the idea. Because if you pose it and you don't know exactly what poses you want, it's gonna be tricky. It's gonna be very, very tricky, because we have an idea of how the body balance and things like that. Sometimes it's really wrong. It's not what we were thinking of. Also, what you can do is just stand yourself in the pose that you want to make, so you kind of understand it better, and that way it gets easier to do the pose. And it's like you were moving a puppet, basically. That's what you're doing. You made a puppet and you're posing it, but you don't have any skeleton, so it's more like working with how you call that, like gum. I don't know the name of the thing in English, but it's basically that thing that kids used to play, and if you're not careful, you're gonna get your creature screwed on terms of like shape. So you gotta be really careful with what you're doing with the posing, because you can go back. Sometimes you can go back so much in 3ds Max. I mean in ZBrush. gotta be careful that you do it right. And this is about it. That's the pose that I did. Then I put it on 3ds Max with a Octane render. And once you know how to do those couple of things, for some, again, I have no idea why this gets like that. I guess next time I'll have to just cut the red parts. But I don't know if they happen. I don't know why they happen, to be honest. It's at the end of every video that I upload to on the Premiere. Anyway, this is the sculpt, how it looks at the end. I put it on 3ds Max and rendered it with Octane render. It took about 6 hours to render, so beware of that. And I have two 180 of 8 gigabytes each. And it even like that to about 6 hours to render. So anyway, just know that it's not like, oh, let's just put the sculpture here and render it. And anyway, I hope you like this video, and please join me at Instagram or Twitter if you wanna say something, say hi. I will answer a bit slowly, but yeah, you can reach me. So if you wanna know more about me, you have the contact in the left. And you have those channels that I'm trying people to get them followed.